As soon as Quinn's match had ended, he decided to go straight to his room, avoiding talking with any of the other participants or remaining in the training center. Even with his short walk back, walking by the next participants who would be taking part in the event, he could feel their eyes as if they were piercing the back of his skull, and the gossiping had started. When he finally arrived in his room, he quickly closed the door behind him and leaned his back against it, letting out a big breath. "So I finally did it," he said with a smile. "It feels nice not to be holding on to such a secret anymore." Still, this was enough for him. One of the huge weights that were always on the back of his mind felt lifted, but he wasn't prepared for all the attention and reactions, so just for tonight he wanted to rest. "I hope Vorden's plan worked." When Vorden whispered in Quinn's ear telling him what to say, he sounded confident and assured him it would stop others from coming after him for his power. However, he did mention it would do nothing for the vampires, so he should still proceed with caution. Lying on his bed, all he wanted to do was shut his eyes. The fight had taken a lot out of him, not only physically but mentally as well. He realized how much harder fighting without relying on his vampire powers was. Looking at his gauntlets, there now was a large scratch mark and several dents on them as well. "Inspect. Durability 40 of 100. Effects of gauntlets will be reduced by 50%. In the fight, he had blocked the multiplier's attacks a few times, and they were now severely damaged. It was a shame because the system shop only had one pair of each item. Even if he got his hand on the materials, he couldn't make another one. What he would have liked to have done is get a better pair altogether, but that would require crystals from advanced tier beasts. With no more expeditions for first-year students, he would either have to wait until he was in his second year or pay to put up a quest asking for certain materials, but his funds weren't exactly the healthiest at the moment either. If they were to break in the next fight without the use of his vampire abilities, it would weaken his attacking power by quite a bit. Still, there was one more thing for Quinn to check out, an exciting surprise that he didn't expect after defeating the multiplier. "Congratulations, you are now level 19. 1 free stat point earned. Update to your current quest. Reach level 20 for your next step in your evolution. 19 of 20. He didn't see the number of EXP points received while checking his EXP rather than the extra going over. Currently, it just said 0 of 51,200. This would assume that the reward was something similar to the quest that had been given when he first fought against Leo, an instant level-up reward. The free stat point was placed into his charm skill, increasing it now up to 29. After it reached level 30, he could then start to focus on his other skills. Charm was handy in helping Quinn keep his secrets, but soon he would have no secrets to keep, and the ones that would be after him next were the vampires. According to the system AI, the number of points and strengths one would have in their charm to control another vampire would be enormous. Using the skills themselves, they naturally had some type of resistance to it, so Quinn needed to focus on getting stronger for what was about to come later. What Quinn was looking at most was the updated quest. There was only one more level until he would evolve into the next step. Would this mean a new appearance, a new set of blood skills? Or would it just mean a new set of problems to deal with? With these thoughts in his head, he didn't remember when he had finally closed his eyes and fallen asleep. He was far more tired than he realized. All of a sudden, he heard the sound of urgent knocking at his door. Why do people love knocking on my door all the time? Quinn thought as he looked at the time on his watch, and he could see that it was already the next day in the early morning. Did I already sleep the whole night? When? When rubbing his eyes and trying to move his quilt, he happened to spot something small on his left hand where his wristwatch was, a small metallic little spider. This is Logan's spider, right? What's it doing here? Quinn Talon, this is military personnel. Please open your door and let us in. 1 second, please. Just let me put on some clothes, Quinn shouted back. The spider quickly ran up to Quinn's ear and started to play a message. While this was all happening, Quinn promptly got dressed into the standard military uniform. Quinn, this is Logan. I kept this spider near you in case you needed a little help. My guess is the military might want to check the level gauge on your watch. Don't worry, my little friend here has already made the adjustments. The spider lifted 2 of its legs as if it was happy about Logan's words and started to imitate a little clap. Make sure to keep the spider on you and don't panic. Let them do what they are here for, and everything will be okay. After listening to the message, the spider hopped down and went just underneath the cuff of his sleeve, where his wrist was, and stayed put. Putting his trust in Logan, and not knowing what was going on, he opened the door to find Haley outside and what looked like one of the soldiers standing by her side. "It's been a long time," Haley said, as she entered the room and placed a suitcase out on the table. "This isn't usually my thing, but they asked me to do this. But before that, congratulations. When I saw you, I knew you were impressive. And don't worry, with all the injuries I see at the school, I think you did nothing wrong hiding your powers." She sat down in the seat by the desk, and the soldier carefully led Quinn over to her, keeping an eye on everything he was doing, watching in case Quinn tried to pull anything. Haley proceeded to open the metal case, and inside it was what looked like a brand new military watch. "Now I have to ask you not to touch anything," Haley explained. "I will take off the old watch and also place the new one on." Quinn nodded in response and went along with it. Even if Logan had said not to worry, right now Quinn was worrying. When they had put the watch on, what would happen when it didn't record his MC cells? Would they find out he wasn't human, or would they then take him in for further questioning? The watch had been taken off and placed on the table. At the same time, she picked up the new one from the suitcase and wrapped it around Quinn's wrist. The watch seemed to be turning on slowly, and at the same time, while underneath his wrist, the little spider started its work. Haley remained silent, and so did Quinn, as they both carefully waited for a result. After a few moments, the watch finished booting up, and the display had changed. It went from level 1 to level 6. "Well, that makes a lot of sense," she said with a smile on her face. "I was a little worried it would say 1 for a second. Do you know why the watch didn't display the correct level, even after learning the ability?" "No, I just decided to go with it since I thought it was better this way," Quinn replied. "Not a problem," Haley said with a smile, as she put the broken watch in the suitcase and left with the guard. Before closing the door, she had one last word to say. "Good luck on the tournament. I'm rooting for you, cursed child," she said as she giggled and shut the door. His face had gone bright red with embarrassment. After hearing a pretty lady like that say his stage name, he now realized how lame it sounded, and he just wanted to make a hole and put his head in it. However, thanks to Logan again, it seemed like he could relax. His vision to look and plan for things had saved him many times, not wanting the attention of the others outside, instead of training like everyone else was doing. He decided to wait in his room until he was called for the next event. Unlike Peter, Quinn wasn't treated like a criminal and was able to stay in contact with the others above using the wristwatch and other methods. They told him what was going on with the events and such, but not much else had happened. The time had come, and an announcement had been made, stating that the participants of the fighting tournament would now be placed in their groups. Leaving the room, everything was different this time when he entered the practice hall. It was the third day of the event, and there were even fewer people now than before. Not only that, every single person there seemed to be looking at him, and this included the second year. Ignoring everything, Quinn decided to stay at the back of the whole group, where the students had gathered, as the organizers called out their names. This way he knew no one would be able to look at him from behind. However, he quickly realized how useless this was, as now everyone seemed to be turning their heads slightly to the side, trying to look back at Quinn. "Okay, and for Group C, we have Ben Richard, Steve Gillian, Jason Wong, Susie Philbuster, Maze Kilbert, Nate Snell, and Quinn Talon." "Yes!" Nate shouted as his name was called out. The others looked at him wondering what he was so excited about, but only he knew. For days he had been hoping to face a half-decent opponent, but so far he had only been disappointed. After seeing the cursed child be put in the same group as him, he was sure his luck had now changed for good. He knew the next fight, the two of them would be facing off against each other. While the names from Group C were being called out, the others in the group gathered and started to look at each other as they noticed something odd. Nate looked at his group, then looked at the group around them again, trying to figure out what was wrong. "Why does our group look different?" he asked. "It's because there's 7 of us," Quinn replied. Suddenly, Nate's heart started to beat. There was an odd amount of people. This often happened due to the number of participants taking part in the tournament. However, more often than not, a few people would drop out, or even a double knockout in some cases. This would eventually even up the numbers. If they had enough people, they wouldn't even bother calling up the substitute, since it would just complicate matters. Right now, in the fighting tournament, there must have been an odd amount of people, and when this happened, it means only one thing. "All right," the soldier said, holding something behind his back the others couldn't quite see. "As you can see, Group C is filled with 7 people rather than 6 or 8, which means one of you won't be fighting today and will be able to move on to the next round, lucky you," Nate said, stomping the floor. "Why this group? Why?" he cried. To the others, this would be a blessing, but to Nate, it seemed like another obstacle trying to get in his way. The soldier waited until Nate calmed down before proceeding further. He then revealed what he was hiding behind his back, and it was 7 small sticks held in his hand, with the bottom part covered up. "One of these sticks' bottom half is dyed red. Whoever chooses this one shall be free from this round. Let's see," he said as he scanned the room. "You," the soldier said, pointing at Quinn. "You're first." Quinn casually walked up to the front. There was no use trying to figure out which one was the red one, so he just picked the one closest to him. The stick was completely clear when pulling out, and there wasn't a red marking at all. "Yes!" Nate shouted out loud again. Now Quinn realized how much Nate wanted to fight him. However, this wasn't like the others, who tried to fight him because he was weak or to try to show off their skills. It was because Nate thought he was strong. Thinking about this made him feel a little warm inside. It was a change and a feeling he had never had before. No one hated his guts for being weak, and no one wanted to bully him. The other participants were called, and they all pulled out clear sticks until eventually only the last 2 participants were left. You're up," the soldier said, pointing at Nate. He was happy about this. It meant his fate was going to be in his hands, not in another's. There were now only 2 sticks left. If he chose the wrong one, then it just wasn't meant to be. He looked left, he looked right, his eyes darting back and forth between the 2 sticks. "Just pick one already," the soldier said, getting agitated that time was being wasted. Closing his eyes and turning his head away, Nate finally picked a stick. "Well, it looks like you won't be taking part in this round, then." Hearing those words made his heart sink. He could feel a lump forming in his throat. "What?" Nate said as he opened his eyes and turned his head, only to see that the soldier was no longer standing in front of him and was standing next to the other student instead. Looking at his stick, he noticed it was completely clear. There was no marking at all. There wasn't time to celebrate for Nate, as the soldier was already leading them all onto the arena floor. "I knew the world wanted you and me to fight," Nate thought. "This was just another sign that nothing was going to get in our way." As they exited from the underground tunnel and onto the floor, the cheers were there as usual, and the others were watching above the large screen. "Oh, this will be interesting," said Sam, seeing the screen. "What do you mean by that?" Vorden asked. "Well, the reason I've been keeping a close eye on the event so far is that my close friend is in it, and it looks like Quinn, and he is in the same group," Sam replied. "Friend, judging by how you were hanging around us all the time, I would have assumed you had no friends," Logan replied. That comment had stung Sam in the heart a bit, but he couldn't deny the fact that if others did know he was hanging around with a bunch of first-years from another base. It really would look like he had no friends. "Is your friend strong?" Vorden asked. "You better believe it," said Sam. "Although he's only a level 7 in terms of ability power, you can tell how strong he is based on how he was able to make it this far." "I look forward to seeing him fight then," Vorden said. "Well, let's just hope your friend and Quinn don't get put together. Otherwise it would be pretty awkward," said Layla. "Yeah, I would feel bad supporting my friend right next to you guys, but as far as I know about Nate, he would be begging to be put up against Quinn." And that was exactly what Nate was doing. The whole way as he walked, he had his hands held together and his eyes closed. He would only rely on his hearing to follow the footsteps in front of him. Then finally they came to a halt. "All right, Quinn Talon, stage 3, and Nate Snell," the soldier said. He couldn't believe it. His prayers were answered, and he was finally going to fight someone worthwhile. The 2 got into position and waited for the announcers to call all of the names. This time there were only 3 platforms, and once again they had increased in size. "And finally, on the 3rd platform, we have the unexpected winner from the last round, the Cursed Child, and his opponent for today, who always seems to manage to pull a win out of the bag, Hard Steely." The Earth user raised the 2 onto the platform, but Quinn was struck with something after hearing the name. It was about the stage name that had been used. He had instantly recognized it because it was the first friend he had ever added to the Power Fighters VR game. These 2 are the same person. Quinn was very thankful to Nate. He had given him advice before the portal planet and also taught him a great lesson when it came to fighting. If he ever met this person in real life, Quinn wanted to thank him for his help. He never thought he would be meeting a person he met through a game this way right now. When the 2 walked onto the large fighting area, the happiness on Nate's face could be seen a mile away, and the camera right now was focused on him. "What's wrong with him? Is he not all there?" The comments about him weren't nice as always, but he didn't care. If he was happy, he would show it. If he was sad, he would show it. Unlike the others, he wouldn't be fake and would just be himself. What was the point of pretending to be something you weren't? "Let's get this fight started. Show me that purple shadow of yours," Nate said, punching his fist into his other hand. Each time this was done, a loud clanging sound was heard, as if metal was clashing against metal. Quinn smiled at Nate and then raised his hand. "I forfeit from the fight." The referee, who was slightly off the side and just outside the arena, was surprised at this. He looked at Quinn for confirmation, only to hear him repeat it. "I forfeit from the fight. He is your winner," Quinn repeated. "No," Nate said. "Why are you doing this to me? Why are you refusing to fight me? Is it because you don't think I'm strong enough? Come on, I'll show you right now," he shouted. However, Quinn couldn't tell Nate the real reason. Quinn knew he was strong, perhaps one of the strongest people he had met before. When the fight had started, he had received a quest. "A strong opponent has appeared. Defeat the opponent in front of you to receive an instant level up." This was the reason why Quinn decided not to continue the fight. Whether he would win or not, only using his shadow abilities, was another story, but what he didn't want to do was evolve in front of everybody. If he were to win the fight, the process would start immediately, and not knowing its result was too much of a risk. He could always have fought and then allowed Nate to win at the end, but judging from how they fought before, Nate wouldn't have liked that. "No, I refuse. I don't care. I'm fighting, and you better start throwing back," Nate said as he walked his way across the arena and towards Quinn. But the referee had come in between the two of them, stopping Nate midway. "The contestant has already forfeited. This match is over." The audience watching was all confused as what was happening, as they were unable to hear the conversation going on. Then the announcement was made. "Hart Steely has been declared the victor due to forfeit." The crowd was stunned by what had just happened, and so were the others in the booth. But they couldn't be for long, as two more interesting fights were happening by the side, and their attention quickly focused on them instead. They could worry about why the other chose to drop out later. "Please," Nate said, "just tell me why you won't fight me." "I never said I wouldn't fight you," Quinn replied. "We don't have to fight here. If you want to fight me, we can do it when this event is over through the game Power Fighters." Nate had never thought about this before. He didn't care where they fought. All he wanted to do was have a good fight. "Wait, what's your ID name?" Nate asked. Quinn smiled at him once again. "Don't worry, we're already friends." After forfeiting the fighting event, Quinn was now free to return to the hotel with the others for the night and rest for the remaining week. It had been a roller coaster ride of events, but still, not everything was over. It seemed like each time he would make progress somewhere, he would be taking 2 steps back somewhere else. When the other matches had ended, the reporter wanted to interview him, asking him why he had decided to forfeit his match. However, by the time the other fights were finished, they quickly realized that instead of staying to watch the other fights, Quinn had left to return to his room. Most of the audience understood and started to theorize their reasons for his forfeit. Either too much power was used in the fight yesterday, and there hadn't been enough time to recover, or there was still more to his ability that the student didn't want to show. After all, it was practically a new ability in the world. The more he fought in front of thousands and thousands of people, the higher the chance the people around could figure it out. Of course, the Big Four didn't have any questions, and Oscar was far more interested in the planet that Quinn had gotten the power from in the first place. While in his room on his own, he still couldn't stop thinking about Peter. It felt cruel in a way that he was just taken. They would never find out his fate or if he was okay. Yet somehow he was meant to just accept the result. But there was truly nothing he could do about it. The AI system had no clue where the current vampires lived. With no way to get there, it was pointless to think of a way to save him. Wait a minute! Suddenly, Quinn stood up from his bed as a spark had hit him in the head. The teleportation device! The one in Logan's room! Didn't Fex say it leads to the vampires? A return portal. The only problem was Logan still hadn't managed to crack the code. Past even that, though, what could Quinn do when he got there? He was still weak. Fex was considered a young vampire, and they were bound to even be more powerful vampires there. Again, there was no use thinking about it, but maybe by this time Logan had cracked the code on the device. Quinn would be strong enough to help Peter. The next day, Quinn had joined up with his friends to watch the event. There were only 2 days left now before everything would come to an end. Meeting up with everyone, the group seemed smaller than before. With Fex and Peter gone, it felt kind of quiet since they were the most talkative bunch in the group. Well, Fex made up for 2 people's absence. With Sam there joining them to watch the events, the group decided they would support Nate. Quinn was secretly rooting for him, but something seemed to be off during his match, as if his mind was somewhere else. "We're already friends?" Nate thought. What did he mean by that? He had been thinking about it all night, and even in his fight right now when he should have been fighting, his mind wasn't focused at all. However, this was the semifinals, the second last day. His opponent wasn't taking it easy and instantly revealed his soul weapon. The first-year students watching were now keeping a close eye. For some of them, it was their first time seeing such a thing. With that, the match was over as Nate was eliminated via knockout from falling off the ring, but he wasn't upset, because he had finally figured it out. Does he mean he's already on my friend list? So that means I've met him before in the game. But he had no recollection of anyone using those types of powers. Nevertheless, he was happy that he would be able to fight the cursed child. Who knows, it might have been someone he fought a long time ago, but his skills were weak at the time. The final day of the event had arrived, and when Sam had met up with the group, he had brought along a little friend with him, Nate. You know this guy, Sam? Nate said, pointing at the cursed child. It's a long story. Why don't you sit down and I'll tell you all about it? They watched the final day of events and continued to talk, laugh, and tell stories to each other. Nate and Sam knew each other before coming to military school, which was a little rare since the organizers tried to purposely split people who did know each other. But because of this, they had plenty of embarrassing stories to tell. When they were done speaking about theirs, they asked about the others, starting with Quinn. He explained how his parents died in the war, and the mood suddenly had gotten somber. Moving on to Vorden, it seemed he kept avoiding the question completely, and so did Layla. The atmosphere suddenly got a little awkward. It felt as if Nate and Sam were very open about everything, while the others were still hiding. Still, they decided to ignore it since everyone was having a good time before this. So what about you, Logan? Sam asked. What did you do before coming here? Not much. I didn't talk to people at my last school as I like to stay alone, started a few gaming projects, and was the same at this school. That is until I met Quinn. Ever since my life seems to have been busier than ever, but not in a bad way. Come on, Layla said. He's not giving himself enough credit. Those few projects he started in school turned out to be a big deal. What do you mean? Sam asked. Those projects are still ongoing today, although you guys might know them like the game Power Fighters, Logan asked. What? Nate said, suddenly interested. The two of them were enthusiasts of the game, and right now they were sitting with the inventor. They weren't even aware that a kid created it, since his family's name who owned the company was attached to it. Wait, said Nate. That means you must know about the Blood Evolver, right? Do you know who he is? Is he hacking the system? Of course I know who he is, Logan replied with honesty. But for privacy reasons, I cannot reveal that to you. However, I can tell you that he has not hacked the site. The ability being used is a strange one. The conversation between the group continued, mostly with Nate trying to figure out some way for Logan to tell him who the Blood Evolver was, and soon, the last event of the whole week was announced, the grand finale of the fighting event. The group wanted to pay attention to the fight, and so did Quinn. These were the strongest two students out of all 7 of the military bases. Due to them being second years, they would be leaving after the end of this year, so there was a good chance Quinn would never see them again. Still, that might not be the case once they left the military. Outside, it was a free world, and there was a chance they could run into anybody again. The second reason was due to the soul weapons that would be used. Quinn had a high interest in soul weapons, as they seemed to increase one's power significantly. It is said that when one is born, the soul weapon already starts to form based on their traits and personality. Eventually, it will get slightly altered when learning their first ability, and will continue to grow from there. Finally, when they are ready, they would be able to manifest one. The thing was, Quinn was unsure if vampires even had soul weapons. Vex didn't seem to have one. Otherwise, he would have used it against the king-tier beast. Maybe unlike humans, vampires when born didn't have a soul weapon inside. But what about him? Quinn wasn't born a vampire and only later turned into a human. And if he did have one, Quinn wondered what it would be. The final fight was set to start. The rules were the same as in previous rounds with slight changes here and there. The platform they would be fighting in was the largest and nearly covered the whole arena floor. From this match, there would be no loss if a participant was knocked out of the stage. In this match, there were also a total of 4 refs. However, most of their jobs consisted of staying by the outer ring of the arena. If the students looked like they were about to fall, they would quickly build a wall stopping them. The 2 in the finals were second-year students from other military schools, so Quinn hadn't seen them before apart from the matches from the event. The first he had seen a little bit off was when the level 8 Earth user had defeated Sam in one of the previous rounds. As for the other one, he had also seen a few matches of his, and he seemed to be a student from the Greylash family, the Power of Lightning. "This is the strongest student I've seen the military raise," Mona said, complimenting Oscar on his hard work. "Of course, we saw the potential in him right away and gave him all the resources he needed," Oscar replied. "He nearly knows every skill we have available. I see a bright future for him. Who knows, he may even eventually become Supreme Commander one day." "Is no one going to compliment my family student?" Owen said, twirling his hair. "If he's as hard-working as your lazy arse, then we already have a winner," Bernie replied. "Well, I don't know how strong he is. He is from a generation I did not teach," said Owen. "As you know, I only recently became the new head. I don't even have a pupil or descendant of my own yet." The fight had started, and the bickering between the two had stopped. The action started almost immediately, with both revealing their trump cards instantly. There was no use trying to hide it or find out how the other would fight. They had ample time to research the fights before the event. The Greylash student lifted his hand in the air, and from the palm of his hand, a blue lightning bolt struck through the air. A few moments later, the lightning seemed to strike back down, hitting the student directly. A large flash of light was seen, causing most of the audience members to close their eyes. When they opened them again, they could see the student's appearance had changed. His hair was now standing upright, his clothes even seemed to be pulled slightly upward, and this blue aura could be seen surrounding his entire body. At the same time, the Earth user had released his soul weapon. He brought his hands close together and closed his eyes. Suddenly, from his fingertips, a white glowing light started to appear and began to form a shape. It had a long handle and a stone head on top. The appearance was that of a hammer. "For some reason, when I look at these two, I feel like the lighting guy should be using the hammer," Vorden said. On display were two different types of soul weapons. The Earth user's weapon was a physical one, and was most likely going to be used more than just an ordinary hammer. The Greylash family student had a unique trait, the energy that powered his body. Wasting no time, the Earth user used the ground to propel him towards the student. It looked as if he was surfing on top of an ocean of mud when he finally got close enough. He jumped off the mound of mud and raised his hammer. Suddenly it looked as if it was growing in size. A giant hammer the size of a house was created and slammed down onto the ground. When lifting the hammer, it shrunk back down to its normal size. The audience was expecting to see a splatter of blood, perhaps, like when one would slap a mosquito, but instead there was nothing. "Cool hammer," the student said, as he suddenly appeared behind the Earth user. Using both hands, he started to create a continuous stream of lighting, connecting both him and the user. The Earth user's body started to shudder in pain, but eventually he managed to stomp his foot on the ground, building a wall, stopping the electric flow. With the first confrontation over between the two, the crowd cheered louder than ever, hoping to see more impressive displays of power. The fight continued between the two students, going back and forth, and they both showed great power and were able to use their soul weapons to their full advantage. But eventually, there was a person who had edged out, and that was the Earth user. Although the lightning user was strong and seemed to be dominating a lot of the fight, the lightning aura surrounding him seemed to fade. His speed began to slow, and eventually he was hit by the hammer. The attacks of the gray, lazy student were strong, but the armor he was wearing protected him well, and eventually all of the Greylash family student's soul weapon energy had run out. A winner had been declared, the Earth user. Inside the booth, Bernie couldn't contain his happiness. He seemed to be even more pleased than Oscar that the Earth user had won. "Oh," Owen said, hearing the loud laughter, "and what happened to the contestants from the Sunshield family? I believe they were all knocked out before even this stage." "Laugh all you want. Just because this generation of my family is weak doesn't mean our family is weak as a whole," Bernie replied. "At any moment in time, feel free to request a duel between our top students, and I will be happy to comply." Owen truly wasn't too bothered by the loss. His ability was powerful, but he also knew it was less effective against the Earth users at a higher level. Their attacks just didn't hurt them as much compared to others. With that, the event had come to an end. There was a closing ceremony that thanked all the students who had taken part in. Then they rallied up the points of each student to declare a single base a winner. In the end, Base 4 was declared the overall victors. They were also the ones who had the Earth user that won the fighting tournament. It was clear that the three main events carried the most points compared to all the other events. Otherwise, based on what everyone else was watching, there was no way Base 4 would have been declared the winner. The students were to return to their hotel and pack their things. Once they had finished, they lined up inside the hotel lobby to do a head count. "All right, it looks like everyone is here," General Mike said. "Strange," said Logan. "Have they not realized Fex has gone missing? He was part of our military base as well. This might prove that although humans don't know the existence of vampires, they have more pulling power and influence in our world than we think." "And I would like to say one more thing," Mike added. "Sorry about doing this to you again." As he finished, the shutters of the hotel lobby started to come down. Metal doors blocked the entranceway, and soon every small little hole was now closed. Looking around, all the soldiers and school staff were now wearing their gas masks, and slowly the room started to fill with gas again. "Oh well, time to fake it again," said Quinn, knowing that the gas would not affect him. Once all the students had been knocked out, the shutters were lifted, and a portal from outside was brought in. While awake, though, Quinn could hear a strange conversation going on. "What do I owe the pleasure of such a humble visit from you for?" Mike said as he walked over to the entrance of the hotel. Inside, walking into the lobby, were all members of the Big Four. "Don't worry about us," Bernie said. "We are here just to see that all the students are transported back safely." It was a little strange. Right now, every hotel was doing the same thing with their sets of students. So what had made the Big Four come over to this hotel specifically, Mike thought. The reason for their visit was Quinn. They were here to make sure nobody tried to do anything to him during the transportation process, and they had even dragged Jack to come with them. "These guys, they were dead serious when they said they didn't want anybody touching him," Jack thought. Jack could now see that they truly would do anything to protect Quinn, which meant he would be able to do nothing while he was at the second military base. Once all the students were safely transported, everyone was free to go back to their dorms and do as they wished, and that included Jack. Using a portable teleporter of his own, he was safely able to arrive in his city. The location of the teleporter was also directed to his tower, a base that he had built under it. When arriving, there were around 100 people lined up to greet him. "We welcome you home, Master True Dream," they all shouted as he came out of the teleporter. Just then, Kevin stood out from the line to deliver a report. "Sir, I have some important news. It's about the Blade family you told me to research. We've found their base," said Kevin. "Excellent," Jack said with a smile as he walked off. Everyone had safely made it back to military school in one piece. On the night of their arrival, there wasn't much to do. The event had ended on a Friday evening, so by the time they had woken up again from the special gas, it was the end of the day. The students were told to head back to their rooms and unpack their belongings. There wasn't much that they took with them, so it wouldn't take long to sort themselves out. When Quinn returned to his room, he had a sense or an unexpected feeling of being home. He never really had a place to call his. Since he was a kid, he would often move from place to place every time he went to a new school. With anyone to go back to or at a permanent base, there was never that home sweet home feeling. For the first time, he had it when he entered his room with Vorden. It was a quick night for the boys. As soon as they finished unpacking, they had gone to sleep, but Layla had a lot of work to do. From the event, she had been informed that Sia was an agent of Pure. This most likely meant that Sia also had a variety of tools that had been given to her that were hidden in the room. If they weren't in the room, then they would be somewhere else. Thankfully, it seemed like Sia was still being looked after by the doctors for a few days before allowing her to return to her room. This would give Layla a head start on clearing everything she could find. Upon returning to her room, she searched and searched, this time looking harder than before. When she first arrived, she had done a quick sweep, looking for cameras and microphones, but found none. But she had never suspected her classmates to also be spying on her. After a deep search and going through Sia's belongings, there were several things found, including a communication ball, the same as Layla had. It was continually flashing blue, showing that there were messages left behind. "Should I just destroy it and forget about everything?" she said, looking at it. She lifted her hand and placed it just a little over the ball, ready to use her powers to rip it apart, but then placed it down by her side again. "No, I can't destroy it, not yet. There's one more person I need to get out of there. Aaron." Although Layla had now cut ties with Pure, she had sent her closest friend at the time over to their side. Perhaps at some point, the communication device would come in handy. She no longer had hers and destroyed it in haste. At the time, she acted on emotion rather than thinking things through, but now she had the time to think. It would be best to keep it for now. "Aaron, I promise I will come to get you one day." It was now the weekend. Students were exempt from lessons for the next 2 days and would start their schedule as normal for the final term. After that, there would be a short summer break for the students where they were able to go home and see their families. Although Quinn didn't know what he would do during that time, it was still a little far ahead for him to be thinking about it. "So, you got anything special planned for these 2 days?" Vorden asked as he laid down in his bed. "Not really. I think I might just check up on everyone to see how they're doing, then head to the VR center later on," Quinn replied. "Wait, you were serious about facing Nate in a power fighter match. How are you going to explain to him about the red aura and the shadow ability?" "I won't," said Quinn. "More than anything, he just wants a fight. Even if he knows who I am, it will be impossible to prove, and it doesn't make any sense. The only person it would make sense to is him. Besides, I have Logan. Say worst comes to worst and an investigation does take place, Logan can just say I'm not the Blood Evolver and state that he's at another base. Not that I think it will come to that anyway." "You depend on Logan a little too much," Vorden said. "Hey, don't forget about what you all did. I think you guys owe me at least this much after going behind my back." "Are you trying to blackmail us? Not cool, man, not cool." The two of them started to laugh as they knew they were just having a jab at each other, and with that, Quinn decided to head off to Logan's room. However, he hadn't been completely truthful to Vorden. He didn't want to check up on the others, but more specifically, he wanted to check up on Logan. A single knock was placed on the door. "Come in," Logan said, and Quinn entered the room. The place this time looked a little different compared to before. The research he had done about the school's underground dungeons had moved to this room instead. "Hey, do you still think that information is useful?" Quinn asked. "Now that Peter is not there anymore?" "It's always handy to keep data," Logan explained. "You never know when we could use it for future events. Perhaps one day you, me, or the others will be placed there. I hope if I get trapped there, you could use the information to try to break me free as well. So, what brings you here?" While Logan was giving his reply, Quinn continued to look around the room, but the last question had caught him slightly off guard. "Who said I wasn't here to see if you were okay?" Quinn replied. "Look, I've known you for a while now, and there seems to be a pattern. If you come to me in the afternoon, as long as there's not an urgent problem, then you are usually there to check up on me and see how I'm doing," Logan explained. "But if you come in the early morning, usually it's because you have a question or a task for me to do." Quinn felt a little awkward and guilty now. It was fine to check up on someone and then ask for a favor or snoop around, but now it felt like the only reason he had come here was to ask Logan for something. Even worse, it was true, and he realized it. "I don't have anything to ask this time, or not a favor at least. I wanted to see how you were doing with that strange square device from before," Quinn asked. Logan, using his two small legs, pushed his feet and rolled across the room with his chair to the other side. On this side of the room, one of the computers out of the many was attached with wires leading to the strange device. On the screen, different combinations continued to appear, and each time it would flash red, it would move on to the next one. "It's taking a little longer than I thought," Logan said, "but the good thing is it will unlock eventually. I just have no clue when." "Is there any way of finding out where it goes once it's unlocked?" "No, not other than going through ourselves, but who knows if we can come back. We would have to take a portable portal device with us just in case," Logan said. "Wait, you're going to go through there?" Quinn asked, worried for Logan. "Well, if you can, please, let me know when the machine unlocks. I don't want you to go there by yourself. Bring me along. You can think of me as your bodyguard." "I'm not a kid. I can do these things by myself," Logan replied, seeming to be annoyed at Quinn's suggestion. "Sorry, I didn't mean it like that. I'm interested just like you. My system was the one that told me it was made by Richard Eno, and there might be a chance this leads to his base or something. If so, maybe he would be able to help us in finding out what this system is." Placing his hand on his chin, Logan started to think about it. It was true that with the help of Eno, it might be a lot easier, but Logan wanted to discover things about Quinn's system on his own. However, there was one possibility. Logan never ruled it out in the first place. Eno was a person who always seemed to be ahead of everyone else when it came to technological advances. There could even be a chance he had something to do with creating the system. All right, I'll let you know when it gets unlocked. With all formalities said and done, Logan got back to working on more gadgets. After the fight with the King Tier, he felt a little weak. He wanted to create some new items for himself. There was always the chance more trouble could be on the way. The next stop for Quinn was to head to the VR room. He had promised Nate he would do battle with him, and he wanted to keep his word. Even if Nate wasn't online yet, Quinn had the chance to play a couple more games. When he was walking through the hallway, there was a familiar face that he didn't expect to meet. "Oh, Quinn, it's been a while since me and you were able to talk," Leo said. "Do you mind meeting me in the martial arts hall? I have some important news to tell you." There was no rush for Quinn to play the game. After all, there was no confirmed time or set time the two would meet. If the two happened to be online, he would send an invite, so Nate could wait for now. "Sure, why don't we head there together?" During the walk to the martial arts hall, it was quite silent between the two. Quinn always found it hard to read Leo, but at the same time, he trusted him. It was a good thing he did as well. He had helped out big time during the events with Peter. It was because of people like him that Quinn hadn't completely given up on hope for humanity. The problem was, at the moment, there seemed to be two bad people for every one good person he would meet. They had eventually arrived in the martial hall, and it felt large and empty without any of the students inside. The weapons were still on the wall, and it reminded Quinn of his first day here. Leo headed to the back of the room and sat up against the back wall, crossing his legs. Quinn then followed and did the same, sitting opposite him. "Quinn, I wanted to tell you something. It was a decision I've been going back and forth, but was always going to do at one point. I will no longer be a teacher here. I'm leaving for good," Leo said, a metallic fist to the poor student's face, and at the same time, the winner appeared written in big, bold letters, now floating above his head. "This is starting to get a little boring," Nate said. He opened up the game screen and started to scroll down through his friends list. There weren't many on the list, as he would often only send out a request to those he had found interesting. "Who is he?" Nate said in anger. "I sent everyone who was online on my friends list a fighting request, and it turns out he's not a single one of them. Even worse, I can't even remember why I added half these people in the first place." Being with Nate and having watched his last few matches, it looked like Nate had gotten stronger again. Very strong. It was a shame if this fight was to happen, only he would be able to see it. "Calm down," Sam said. "Maybe he's not like us. Not everyone plays the game this much. Even if he said he would send you an invite, he didn't say when." At this point, Sam had put nearly everything together and had guessed who the cursed child was. Although their powers weren't the same, it was the only thing he could think of, hearing what he had said at the end of the match. He had only come up with this theory after finding out that Logan was the creator of the game. Perhaps when Quinn had made that shadow dome, he started to display powers that would have been similar to what he used in the game. With Logan, he could always ask him to program it, so his powers looked different when performing it in the game. This way, his ability would still be kept secret from the world. But Sam didn't want to tell Nate this. First of all, it was only a theory, and he wasn't 100% sure this was right. The second thing was, he wanted to see the joy on Nate's face when he found out the cursed child and blood evolver were the same person. Inside the martial arts hall, two people were sitting opposite each other quietly. Quinn couldn't believe what he had just heard. Of course, people weren't able to leave the military freely when they wanted, especially a teacher still in the middle of their term. But what Quinn didn't know was Leo had multiple conditions set when he had agreed to join, one of them allowing him to leave whenever he wished. This wasn't normal for teachers or the military to have, but it was one of the things that allowed them to sway him over to their side. This news had made Quinn upset. Leo was the first adult who treated him normally, even at a low power level, and even after finding out he was a vampire. There weren't many people out there like him. "Can I ask why?" Quinn asked. "Of course. It's why I wanted to speak to you," Leo replied. "I started to realize it after what happened during the event. You know, I know you, Peter, and the boy Fex were the same types of people. The student Fex hasn't returned, and we were told he transferred to another base due to complications. But when I tried to find out more about what happened to him, I couldn't. Not only that, but during the event itself, I met another that was like you." "Is he talking about a vampire? The other said someone had come to collect Fex. Is it possible that it's who he's talking about?" Quinn thought. "I guess she was there to save Peter, and now that Peter is no longer here, I believe they succeeded, but during that time the two of us fought." Hearing this was shocking to Quinn. Seeing that Leo was fine, even during the event, must have meant he could go toe-to-toe with an adult vampire. Leo was indeed powerful. At the same time, Quinn wished he was there at the time to see the fight. He could have learned a lot of things by watching two skilled participants. "If the two of us fought at full strength, I honestly don't know which of us would win. Our confrontation was short, but it was enough for me to realize that being here has made me a little soft. After the war, I thought it might have been my time to rest and teach a new generation. However, I didn't realize how corrupt the current system is. Not only that, but it's now too risky for me to be here. I don't regret my involvement in helping you kids. It brings joy to my heart. But if the military were to find out, I don't know what would happen. There seem to be greater forces at play here that we cannot see. Quinn, let me tell you, there's a war coming. Whether it will be against each other, humans, against the Dalki, or an unknown force, I do not know. But I want to be there to protect my friends and family when I can. To do that, I need to train once again, and I cannot do that here." The feeling that Quinn had was the same as Leo. He thought others wouldn't have this feeling of worry over their shoulder, that the current life they're living now could be taken away at any second. And the last person he thought would feel they would need to get stronger was Leo. He was already plenty strong, yet he still felt the need to get stronger to protect those around him. "Thank you for telling me. I understand, but why did you feel the need to tell me?" "After all, you know I'm different," Quinn replied. Leo then smiled at Quinn. "Because although we may be different in one way, I feel like we are nearly precisely the same in another. Both of us want to get strong to protect those around us. When we first met, I felt it. As a leaving gift, there are two things I want to give you." Leo then reached around behind him and pulled out what looked like 3 beast crystals, each one with its outer layer transparent in color. "Are these beast crystals?" Quinn said as he looked closely at them. "What level are they at? They're so clear." "These crystals are at the advanced level. They are specially chosen to be used to be made into a gauntlet-type weapon. I wish I could have given you one of my weapons, but there is a particular reason why I can't. But this is the next best thing," Leo said as he tried to place the crystals into Quinn's hand, but almost immediately, Quinn pushed the crystals back towards Leo. "I can't. I didn't earn these myself. It doesn't feel right," said Quinn. "Now is not the time to be so foolish. When you are fighting an enemy, do you think they care how you got these crystals? When you need to protect those close to you, does it matter where you got that power from? Or would you rather see those close to you because of some silly pride?" Leo was quite stern and straight when he said this, but he needed to be. Quinn was only 16 years old, but soon he would turn into an adult and leave, and who knows when the war would start again. After hearing Leo's wise words, Quinn took the crystal and placed them in his lap for now. "The second thing I wanted to give you is not a gift, but something that can only be taught. First of all, tell me, what tier do you think my weapon is at?" Leo asked, as he pulled his sword out and placed it down for Quinn to look at. He had seen Leo defeat a Dalgi with a single strike, and he knew he was powerful. To be able to be so strong, it had to be at a great tier. "Is it a legendary tier weapon?" Quinn asked. "Well, you would be more surprised when I tell you it is only at the king tier level," Leo replied. "In the past, before beast tier weapons even existed, there was a small group of people who would be able to cut giant stones with their swords, lift buildings 10 times their weight, and slow down the aging process. Yet, not a single one of them had what we know today as abilities, but they certainly had powers beyond that of a normal human." Hearing this, Quinn thought these humans sounded like vampires, with the things they could do, but it was clear Leo wasn't going in that direction. Even though he knew Quinn was different, not once had he called him a vampire. "I'm a descendant of these types of people. This isn't an ability, and in truth, every human out there is capable of achieving such results. Some even achieve it without realizing it. It's what saved me during the war. This thing is inside our bodies, and it's known as ki. I want to teach you this special technique, and hopefully you will be able to use it wisely. But before even that, I will need to explain to you how I came to learn of it and how I also became known as the hero, the blind swordsman.
Hi, Quinn here. Wondering what happens next? If you want to jump the queue and unleash all episodes, click on the link here and install the Pocket FM app.